Clutch closers, how's it going today? Doing okay? Got a vacation planned already for the year? Where do you think you're going? Where do you normally eat when you go on vacation? Where'd you eat this last Saturday, this last Sunday? What'd you do after church? How are the kids doing? What about your football team? Football team doing good? Oh man, that was a tough loss they had, right? Whew, what is all this? Am I building rapport right now? Is that how to build rapport? That is the exact opposite of how you build rapport. That person struggling at the bottom, that's how they believe it's how to build rapport. But that person at the top, that true closer, that clutch closer, they're building rapport by using these right here. That's how you build rapport. You listen to your customer. You find that one thing that they want, that one thing that they're trying to overcome, and then you figure out how to give it to them. It's not by asking about the football game. It's not by asking about the kids. You can do all that stuff after the ink's on paper. That's when it's time for that kind of stuff. Then you're starting to build a relationship a little bit with the customer. You want to know them. You want to pull them in closer. You want to show that you have some interest in them and their life. You've already got ink on paper. Let's move forward. But until that point happens, until you have ink on paper, you have to use your ears. You have to use empathetic statements like, I agree and I understand. And just to clarify my thinking, I would feel the same way if I was in your place. There was once a study done, and I think it was something like, building rapport is all about 7% of the words you say, 38% of it's the tone of the words that are coming out of your mouth, and 55% of it's body language. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I don't know how they could come up with such exact studies and precise nature as that to build rapport and what you say and build relationships. But what I can tell you, if you're not using these, if you're not listening to your customer and you're not trying to understand why they're in front of you, if you're not understanding what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, then you're not going to build rapport. And there's a few techniques that you can use to help you get to that. I think technique's a lot better word for it because that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to get honest, accurate information. And one of them is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and that is kind of understanding where your customer is, what they're thinking, and then trying to make sure that you're on the same page. Mirror and match is one of the strongest things that you can do to help do that and to help get that subconscious feeling of rapport built between the two of you. And where does mirror and match come into play? If your customer's standing there and they've got their hands by their side, then you've got your hands by your side. If a customer's moving up and they've got their hands crossed, maybe you've got your hands crossed. I can tell you several times inside of a car deal, one of the techniques I would use if I was brought in on a TO is when I sat down in front of the customer, and if the customer was sitting there and they had their legs crossed, I'd pull up and cross my legs, and we would start talking. We would start having a conversation about their needs, their wants, and what they wanted to accomplish so I could get an understanding of where they were and what they wanted to do. And then I would uncross my leg. And if the customer uncrossed their leg, then I knew it was time that I could move into some numbers. But if the customer didn't uncross their leg, then I crossed mine back and I knew I had a little bit more conversation than I needed to have. I knew I didn't quite understand, and me and Mr. Customer or Miss Customer were not linking up yet. And we hadn't linked up to the point to where they trusted me and that wall was still there. And so I uncrossed. They stayed, it comes back. We need a little bit more conversation. I'm paying attention to where they are. They move up and scratch their ear. I know two things. One, they're feeling a little uncomfortable about what they're saying because they pulled their ear, but I might move my hand to my face next time I talk too. Because we're going to mirror and we're going to match in this conversation. And then I'm going to uncross my leg. And when that customer uncrosses their leg, then I know that that wall started to break and they've started to understand what I'm doing here. And now I might get some more accurate, honest information because we've linked up. We've synced up. I can remember the first time I ever started learning about NLP and learning about mirror and match. And I had been studying it, and I was still a little nervous to put it into practice. And me and the owner of the company ended up in the same situation where we're standing out on the back of a truck. And he's standing there and he's got his legs hiked up and he's talking to me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And I took and I hiked my leg up and I started talking to him. And I started mirroring. If he moved his hand out, I moved my hand out. If he scratched his ear, I scratched my ear. If he rubbed his nose, I rubbed my nose. And then after I'd done that for about 2 minutes, I said, you know, I think we're synced up. I picked my leg up and I put it down. And you know what? This is a guy that I respected to this day, that I would absolutely still take a bullet for. And he sits there and he looks at me, and while he's talking, he takes and he puts his leg down. And he had no reason why. And then I said, man, I can't believe this. So then I moved up and I scratched my ear. And then he moved up and he scratched his ear. And all of a sudden, I realized, man, this works. Mirror and match, and rapport started to flow, and the conversation became more open and honest. And I had one of the most open and honest conversations I'd ever had with him in my entire career. And I can say a lot of my career might go back to that initial conversation that I had with that man. He became a mentor to me, and he meant a whole lot to me in my career. And it was something as simple as mirror and matching that all of a sudden Bradley understood him. Bradley was a good guy. And we were there linked up together, just the two of us. And that is a small technique that you can use to help you build rapport with your customer. Another technique you can use is making sure that you separate yourself from everybody else. You can't look like everybody else. And if let's say you're in the car business, and the car business has done it to itself. It's given itself through the years a bad reputation. And I've seen some of the characters that came and went inside the car business back in the day when everybody wore pinky rings and big giant suits that come up, and it created a feeling of unsavoriness, to say the least. And so we created an atmosphere all of a sudden that we wonder why we have this wall when a customer pulls up on the lot, why they have this fear, this uncertainty and doubt. And you have to separate yourself from everybody else. You have to walk different. You have to talk different. You have to look different. Because if you do the same thing that the guy down the street did, then you're no different than him. Why should they buy from you? And your customer may or may not have had a bad experience last time they bought their car. They've probably had a bad experience in their life if they've been buying for any length of time, buying something. And if you do the same thing that that person did, then guess what your customer is going to associate you with? They're going to associate you with that person. You're no different than them. You're no different than the guy that 5 years ago took advantage of them. You're no different than the guy that tried to take advantage of their son when they came there to buy a car. You've got to look and be different. You've got to carry yourself different. You've got to vibrate a winning attitude. One of the things that I did when customers came up early, and I wish I had one today to show you, I put my wife on my business card. I learned very quickly as I looked around at the average people around me. And they had these business cards. Some of them were homemade. Some of them were just whatever the dealership gave. It's just the free card they give when you're hired. Every new hire gets the free card. It's the cheapest one you get. Dealership's name, phone number. And you know what your customer's doing with that card? They're throwing it away. They're in glove boxes. They're in the bottom of trash cans. I took my business card and I said, you know, this is going to be a calling card for me. And I put my wife on it. And it was a picture of me, it was a picture of my wife, and underneath it, it said, help me keep my wife smiling, buy a car today. And when I walked up to the customer, I didn't give it to the husband like everybody else in America did. I walked up, and we're talking about, you know, the 90s, the early 90s. I walked up to him, and I gave it to the wife, and I said, I want you to know, I put my wife on my business card so you know where your money's going. And every single time without fail, the wife slapped the husband and said, see, honey, he knows, he knows, he knows. And do you think maybe my odds just went up? And I'll tell you, from that point forward, I started building rapport right then with the decision maker. It started at the business card. And how good are you at remembering names? You think and you do this every day, and you meet new people every day. How good do you think your customers are at remembering names? But when they call back to the dealership and they can't remember your name, they can say, hey, I want to talk to the guy. I can't remember his name, but he had a picture of his wife on his business card. Now you're starting to look different than everybody else. And everybody gets a business card. The wife gets a business card first. The husband gets a business card next. And even little Junior down low, how are you today? Are you in the market for a new truck or a new car? Oh, when you're ready, you just give me a call. How about that? How old is he, by the way? What, you're 5? How many other people are doing that with Junior, right? Mom and Dad may throw your business card away. It may hit it. They don't remember you. They don't remember anything else. But when Junior gets put back in the truck and he's sitting back there in his car seat, he's holding on to that business card because nobody else even gave him the time of day when he stepped on the dealership. Everybody else ignored him. But you know who noticed that? The mama noticed it. She noticed that you paid attention to Junior. Junior noticed that you paid attention to Junior. And Junior's going to walk around with your business card the rest of the day, grinning from ear to ear. And while they're trying to figure out where to buy their next car from, guess who you got on your side? Junior. And there's a great place to build rapport that most people ignore. In fact, I would tell you even a lot of closers at the top of the board are ignoring this area. Some of them are being different, sure. You know, they're sitting up there, they're understanding that they're not there to talk about football, and they're being a little different in their delivery and how they act. But a lot of people are ignoring a number one place where you can build rapport, and that's the trade-in. The trade-in is an extension. It's legally an extension of a customer's house. And you need to pull that up. Clutch closers pulling that trade up to maybe as early as the second step in the process. Let me tell you a little story. I was sitting back one time, and I'm getting led all over the lot by this customer. She had walked up, and she's running from car. I was selling Chryslers, and she's running from Chrysler to Chrysler. And she'd walk up, and she'd look in the car. She'd look at the window sticker, and she'd stick her head in it. And then she'd run to the next one. She'd look at the window sticker, and she'd stick her face in it. And she'd run to the next one. She'd stick her face in it. And I'm following her around, and I remember I'm hanging off the back of the antenna, and I'm letting my manager see me with the customer, because if he didn't see me with the customer, he was going to come out and scream at me, what is the customer doing by herself? So I'm just kind of hanging close so I don't get screamed at. You know, that's the only reason why I'm there. And then I'm wondering, what's this guy going to do? How is he going to take a TO on this customer? Because that's the next thing he's going to scream at me about when she just leaves, because I got a little Rambo lady here, that's what that's one of the negative terms we don't use anymore, because what I had was a buyer. She's going to run right straight across. She's going to get in her car and she's going to leave, and then I'm going to get screamed at because I didn't get a TO from my manager, like she wants to talk to him anyway. So, guy walks out. Mickey Webb loved to have the biggest lunches in the car business, and he'd probably just been sitting in there eating some red lobster, and he'd probably had him some lobster tail and a steak, and he walks out and he's got his toothpick and he's chewing it, watching me. He says, Brad, I've been watching you with that customer. I said, yeah, Mickey. Isn't she supposed to be following you around? And it hit me. I said, you're exactly right. I could have took that a completely different way. I could have took it, I said, ma'am, let me ask you something. I know you're looking at these cars, but I noticed the car you drove up in, that Chevrolet you drove up in, is that the car you're going to be replacing? And she says, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about replacing. I said, do you mind if I look at it with you? Because I need a vehicle like that. And the truth is, it doesn't matter what you trade in, you need a vehicle like that, so you're not lying. I said, I need it. Can I look at it? Would you mind walking with me while I look at it? And next thing you know, here we go. And we walk over to her car. And we do a walk around on the car, and I started asking questions. What do you like least about this vehicle? What do you like most about this vehicle? And she started telling me. And so I said, if you were going to sell this vehicle, why don't you help me sell this vehicle? If you were going to sell it, what would you talk about? And what I learned there was what I needed to hit. I needed to hit the hot button on what did she like most. I needed to stay away from what did she like least. And then she started telling me how to sell her trade. And guess what? That's how I'm going to sell this one. And I said, hey, can we go for a test drive in it? Do you mind if I look at it? No, I don't mind. And off we go on a test drive. Now, she's looking at high-end, loaded up. I think back then they were LXIs, I think was the trim level. They're everything you can get on one. It's leather. And you didn't always have navigation back then. Almost leather back in the 90s was probably everything you could get on one. That thing was probably with a CD player maybe if you had it. Most of them had tape still. So really telling my age. So we go off on this test drive and we get in her car. She's got an AM radio. The air conditioner doesn't work in it. All the windows are rolled down. I learned right then when a customer pulls up in the summer with all their windows down, I learned right then on that test drive with that customer what that meant. And I also knew when we got back to the dealership, anything I showed her was better than what she was driving right now. And then I started asking her, let me ask you, I know I saw you looking at Chryslers. What did you like most about the Chrysler? What excited you there? Well, I've always wanted a convertible. A convertible is my dream car, and I stop by here about once every 3 months, and I just look at all of them because it makes me feel good. I said, have you ever drove one? No. And I said, well, thank you for letting me drive this car. I need it. Let's go see if we can find your dream car. Bottom line, 3 hours later, her husband and her in the box signing, and it's a $1,000 commission to me, and she was one of the happiest customers I ever had. She worked at one of the largest corporations in the city that I was from. They were one of the biggest employers, and guess what she became? My biggest bird dog. And I very easily could have been completely justified by letting her walk off the lot, but instead I decided it was time to build rapport. It was time for me to take control over the situation, and it was all because of Mickey Webb and his toothpick. Because she's supposed to be following you. So ultimately, building rapport is figuring out what they want, why they want it, and then figuring out how to give it to them, feeding it back to them over and over again inside the presentation. That's what I did on that test drive and that trade-in. That's how I started building rapport. That's how I made that $1,000 commission and got the biggest bird dog I'd ever had in my career. That's how we started moving forward to better myself in my life. That's why you're a clutch closer. If you liked what you saw today, remember, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the little bell down there on the side. Remember to always be clutching the close because you're a clutch closer.